What would you do? I mean, really? What the hell would you do if someone took your life's work, spit on it, and then set it on fire right in front of your face? Before you answer, make sure you're subscribed and you hit that like button, because the story I'm about to tell you is going to challenge everything you think you know about power, respect, and payback. You're not going to want to miss a single brutal second of this. It's Thursday afternoon, 3:15 p.m. inside the Sterling Trust Bank in downtown Miami, a palace of cold marble and colder money. The air conditioning hums a tune of quiet wealth. A man named Richard Sterling, the branch manager, a predator in a $1,000 suit, holds a business check for $4.7 million. He looks at the man across from him, a man named Julian Sinclair, 38 years old, dressed in a plain black hoodie, worn jeans, and clean but unremarkable sneakers. "This is what we do with trash money from trash people, kid," Sterling sneers, his voice loud enough for the whole bank to hear. His gold-plated lighter flicks open with a sharp click. A flame leaps to life. He touches it to the corner of the check. The paper blackens, curls, and surrenders to the fire. He holds the burning check aloft like a trophy, a sick torch in the temple of finance. The flames devour the ink, turning millions of dollars into smoke and ash. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he drops the flaming carcass at Julian Sinclair's feet. Julian doesn't even flinch. The fire dies out between his sneakers, leaving a charred, black stain on the polished marble. Sterling grinds the heel of his Italian loafer into the ashes, twisting it slowly, deliberately, a final act of desecration. His eyes are locked on Julian's. "See that?" Sterling announces to the half-dozen customers who have stopped to watch the spectacle. Problem solved. A woman in a ridiculously large sun hat is already live-streaming on her phone, whispering breathless commentary to her followers. Two businessmen have their phones out, recording. The security guard, a man named Tom, finally starts to move, his hand hovering over the radio on his belt. "Sir," he says, his voice uncertain, "you need to calm down." Richard Sterling ignores him. His entire focus is on the man in the hoodie, whose expression remains unnervingly, almost inhumanly calm. Julian's hand drifts towards the pocket of his hoodie, pauses, and then falls back to his side. The massive digital clock on the wall ticks over. 3:16 p.m. He has exactly 14 minutes until his emergency board meeting. Have you ever been judged so completely, so instantly, that someone literally incinerated your value in front of a crowd? 3:16 p.m. The humiliation was a physical thing, thick and choking like the smoke from the burned check. "Everyone, get a good look at this," Sterling barked, pointing a manicured finger at the black smudge on his pristine floor. "Did you see it? A forged check for nearly $5 million. He thought he could fool us. We burned it, right in his face. That's how Sterling Trust handles fraud." Julian stood motionless as the fine black ash clung to his sneakers. The bitter smell of it filled his nostrils. Thin wisps of smoke coiled upwards from the remains. "Richard, maybe we should take this to your office," whispered Sarah Jenkins, the assistant manager. She was trying to de-escalate, her eyes darting nervously between her boss, the growing crowd, and the man who seemed as calm as a stone. "Quiet, Sarah," Sterling snapped, his eyes shining with a feverish glee. "Now, sir, what's your real name? Don't bother giving me some fake ID to go with the fake check I just sent to hell for everyone to see." The woman with the sun hat angled her phone, getting a close-up of the ashes, then panning back to Julian's impassive face. Her live-stream viewer count was exploding. 212, 540, 897, 1,000 people watching in real time. The comments scrolled by in a blur. "OMG, he torched it." "Savage manager von Tunantors, want ers bank boss, Ontrantor, Miami Heat." Sterling kicked at the ash pile with his shoe, scattering the fragile remains. "You walk into my bank, a place of prestige, wearing clothes you probably slept in, carrying a forgery bigger than this city's budget. You think we're stupid?" He ground his heel into the ash again, pulverizing it into a fine black powder. An older woman, dripping in diamonds and smelling of expensive perfume, clapped softly from her seat by the loan officer's desk. "Bravo, Richard," she called out, her voice cutting through the lobby. "That's precisely how you handle these people. Burn the evidence first, ask questions later." Other customers were now drawn in, forming a loose circle, a jury of the wealthy and the well-dressed. A man in a linen suit nodded in agreement. "Should have done it the second he walked through the door," he muttered to his companion. Julian slowly reached for his wallet. Sterling saw the movement and, with shocking speed, lunged forward and snatched the wallet from Julian's hand. He held it up triumphantly. "Well, what do we have here? Stolen credit cards to complete the set, I imagine." He waved the simple leather wallet in the air, like a captured flag. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have the complete package. Fake check, stolen wallet, and I'm sure a fake ID is coming next." The security guard was now speaking urgently into his radio. "Yeah, dispatch, we need police assistance. Attempted fraud. Suspect is non-compliant. Manager has neutralized the fraudulent document." Finally, Julian spoke. His voice was deep, steady, and carried an unnatural calm that was more unsettling than any shout. "Mr. Sterling, I would like my wallet back. When the police arrive, you can explain to them exactly where you got it." Sterling laughed and theatrically tucked the wallet into his own suit pocket. "I'll also explain how you managed to create such an impressive-looking forgery before I had to destroy it to preserve the scene of the crime." A teenager with neon green hair, who had been standing by the ATM, was now filming, his video already uploading to TikTok. The caption read, "Bank manager goes beast mode on scammer. Bank burn, Auchinart, fraud fire, Fortons, Miami Savage, Chorshon Justice." The digital clock on the wall now read 3:20 p.m. Julian glanced at it, and for the first time, a flicker of something, annoyance maybe, cracked his stoic facade. "Oh, what's the matter? Running late for your next big scam?" Sterling taunted, gesturing dramatically at the ashes. "Don't you worry. You won't be going anywhere for a very long time. You see that pile of filth on my floor? That's what happens to criminals in Richard Sterling's bank." Julian's phone began to buzz in his pocket, a persistent, insistent vibration. He ignored it. The sound, however, drew Sterling's attention. "Turn that garbage off," he snapped. "Your accomplices can wait their turn." The livestream viewer count surged past 1,200. The comments were a wildfire. He literally torched it. Boss move. Ashes to ashes, fraud to dust. The video was being mirrored and shared across every platform. Sterling preened in the glow of his viral fame, straightening his silk tie. "This, people, is why we have to remain vigilant. Individuals like this think they can just waltz in here and steal from hard-working, honest Americans." Sarah, the assistant manager, shifted on her feet, glancing from the ashes to Julian's face. His calm was starting to feel wrong. It wasn't the calm of a defeated criminal. It was the calm of a patient predator. The woman in diamonds was now loudly telling her friend how wonderful it was to finally see someone with some backbone in customer service. A burly man by the entrance muttered, "Burning it was a bit much, but it damn well sends the right message to his kind." More people had their phones out now. The normal business of the bank had ceased entirely. Everyone was a spectator in the arena Sterling had created. For a fleeting moment, Julian's eyes drifted to his hoodie pocket, where the corner of a first-class boarding pass was just visible. Miami to Geneva, departing the next morning. It was a detail lost on Sterling, who was too busy playing the hero for his audience. "Sir, please have a seat over there and wait for the police," the security guard instructed, pointing to a set of leather chairs. "Actually," Julian said quietly, his gaze fixed on the burned remains of his life's work, "I believe there has been a profound misunderstanding here." Sterling threw his head back and laughed, a loud, ugly sound that bounced off the marble. The only misunderstanding is you thinking that pathetic piece of paper would ever work in my bank. It was 3:23 p.m. Sterling, now fully high on the attention, turned to his audience, both in the bank and online. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what happens when we protect our community. We burn the fraud, we protect the innocent, and we never ever let the criminals think they can outsmart us. The crowd murmured its approval. Julian allowed the guard to guide him to the chair, but something had shifted in his expression. He looked down at the ashes, then back up at Sterling, and a strange, almost amused look entered his eyes. It was the look of a chess master who sees the checkmate 10 moves away. He checked his watch, an elegant Swiss timepiece whose understated value was lost on the frantic crowd. Exactly 7 minutes until his board meeting. 7 minutes until Richard Sterling's world turned to ash. 3:24 p.m. The arena was packed, the lions were circling, and the crowd was baying for blood. "Sarah, get over here now," Sterling commanded, his voice booming with the self-importance of a Roman emperor. "You need to see how we handle real-world fraud prevention." Sarah Jenkins walked reluctantly from behind the counter, her heels clicking a nervous rhythm on the floor. She stared at the black confetti of the burned check, then at Julian's face. Her gut was screaming at her. Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. "Take notes for the training manual," Sterling said, puffing out his chest. "This is textbook. 1. Suspect presents an absurdly large, obviously fake check. 2. Suspect displays other signs of criminal enterprise, like a stolen wallet." He patted his pocket where Julian's wallet rested. 3. I, as the senior officer, neutralized the primary evidence before he could destroy it or pass it to a waiting accomplice. The livestream audience had swelled to over 2,000, the numbers climbing every second. The comments were a toxic waterfall. "This is insane! Manager is a legend! POS got what he deserved. Call the feds. This is better than reality TV." The woman in the sun hat was a pro, keeping both Julian's unnerving calm and the dramatic pile of ashes perfectly in frame. A second security guard jogged into the lobby, slightly out of breath. "What's the situation, Tom?" he asked the first guard. "Major fraud attempt," Tom replied, his voice filled with newfound authority. "Manager stopped it cold, burned the counterfeit check himself. Suspect is also in possession of stolen credit cards." Sterling's chest swelled with pride. "That's right, officer. See that mess on my floor? That was a fraudulent instrument for $4.7 million. Can you believe the audacity?" A group of college kids near the coffee bar had abandoned their drinks to film. One of them had already posted a clip to his Instagram story with a dozen fire emojis. Bank manager literally burns a scammer's check. Savage Nazi in Miami. Jorn Fraud Patrol. Viral. Julian sat in the leather chair, but he wasn't slumped in defeat. He was poised, relaxed, a king on a temporary throne. The light caught the face of his Swiss watch as he checked the time again. 3:26 p.m., exactly 4 minutes left. "You're remarkably composed for a man whose brilliant criminal career just went up in smoke," Sterling observed, circling Julian slowly, savoring his victory. "Most of them start crying or begging by now." "Do they?" Julian replied, his voice quiet but carrying an eerie resonance. His eyes followed Sterling's every move. "Oh, look, the great criminal speaks," Sterling announced to his audience. "Go on then, enlighten us. Give us your sob story, tell us your lies." "Phew." The woman in diamonds had moved closer, her friend trailing behind her. "I've been banking here for 30 years, she whispered loudly. "I've never seen such decisive action. Burning the check right on the floor, absolutely brilliant." A balding man in an expensive suit joined the chorus of praise. "Richard, you should run for city council. We need men with your kind of spine running this town." Sterling beamed, adjusting his tie. Just doing my civic duty, protecting the honest citizens of this city from the parasites who try to bleed them dry. Julian's phone buzzed again, more urgently this time. He glanced at the screen. A text message. Urgent. Emergency board meeting starting. Where are you? I told you to turn that off, Sterling snapped. Your getaway driver will have to wait. Actually, Julian said calmly, rising slowly from the chair, I really do need to take this. Both security guards stepped forward, their hands moving toward their belts. Sit, back, down. Sir, the first guard ordered. You aren't going anywhere until the police arrive. The live stream count hit 2,500. The woman filming gasped for her audience. Oh my God, you guys, he's trying to make a run for it. The scammer is trying to escape. Sterling laughed that ugly, harsh laugh again, pointing at the ashes. Look at that pathetic little pile on my floor. That was your golden ticket, wasn't it? Your big score. And now it's nothing. Absolutely nothing but carbon and public humiliation. Sarah Jenkins felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. Her professional instincts were screaming. Richard, maybe we should just verify a few things before the police. Verify what, Sarah? Sterling cut her off. The fake check is ash. The stolen wallet is secure. The case is closed. Just then, the main doors of the bank slid open. A woman in a razor-sharp business suit, carrying a leather briefcase, walked in. She stopped dead, her eyes taking in the crowd, the security guards, and the lingering smell of smoke. Excuse me, she asked a bystander. What on earth is going on? The businessman who had been cheering Sterling on was happy to explain. You just missed it. The manager caught a professional con artist red-handed, burned his fake check to a crisp right in front of him. It's all over the internet already. The woman's eyes widened in shock as she spotted Julian, sitting calmly, surrounded. She immediately grabbed her phone. Sterling saw her and addressed her with a grand, theatrical gesture. Ma'am, you are witnessing justice in action. This individual tried to defraud this fine institution with a counterfeit check. $4.7 million, the woman in diamonds added helpfully. Can you imagine the nerve? More students entered the bank, drawn by the commotion. They all started filming. A multi-angle chorus of smartphone witnesses. Julian checked his watch one more time. 3:28 p.m. His expression shifted, just a fraction of an inch, but it was a tectonic shift. It was the face of a man who had made a decision that was about to change everything. The live stream comments grew uglier, filled with racist vitriol. Lock him up. Throw away the key. That's what they do. Good thing that check got torched. Sterling was soaking it all in, his voice growing louder, more self-righteous. This is what happens when good, honest Americans stand up to crime. We don't negotiate. We don't back down. We destroy their tools and expose their lies for the world to see. The crowd roared its approval. But Sarah, the assistant manager, was noticing things. The worn jeans were designer. The plain sneakers were a rare, expensive brand. The watch. That watch was worth more than her car. And the way Julian carried himself, the quiet confidence, the utter lack of fear, it didn't fit the picture Sterling was painting. Richard, she whispered, tugging his sleeve. Something isn't right about this. Not now, Sarah. He waved her away, drunk on his own heroism. Julian's phone buzzed one last time. He looked at the screen, then at Sterling's smug face, then down at the ashes of his fortune. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Julian Sinclair smiled. A genuine, confident, terrifying smile. 3:29 p.m. Mr. Sterling, Julian said, his voice cutting through the noise like a surgeon's scalpel. I believe it's time for us to have a professional conversation. Sterling laughed. Negotiate? Friend, the time for talking ended when you brought that piece of garbage into my bank. Julian reached slowly, deliberately, into the pocket of his hoodie. Both security guards tensed, their hands going to their sidearms. Easy now, the first guard warned. Julian's smile widened. The first-class boarding pass was visible for a split second before his hand moved past it, retrieving something else. Exactly 1 minute until the emergency board meeting. 1 minute until Richard Sterling's world caught fire. 3:30 p.m. The world tilted on its axis. Julian Sinclair didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a simple, stark white business card. He placed it gently on the counter, right next to the scattered ashes of the check. The card landed without a sound, but its impact was a sonic boom. The nearest security guard, Tom, leaned forward to read it. The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Julian Sinclair, Chairman and CEO, Sinclair Global Investments. The woman with the sun hat zoomed her camera in on the card, her hands now visibly shaking. The comments on her live stream exploded as thousands of people read the text at the same time. Wait, what? No way. CEO? Plot twist. This can't be real. Sterling still tried to bluff, his voice laced with a desperation he couldn't hide. Oh, please. Anyone can get fake business cards printed for $10. What's next? A fake driver's license? Julian reached into his hoodie again and produced a slim, high-end tablet. With a few fluid taps, he opened the Sterling Trust Bank's proprietary mobile application. He navigated to a section deep within the system, a place most employees never saw, the Board of Directors portal. His fingers flew across the screen with the casual confidence of daily use. The login page appeared. Corporate board access, authorized personnel only. He typed in his credentials from muscle memory. The screen refreshed, revealing his profile in crisp, undeniable corporate font. Name: Julian Sinclair, principal shareholder, 73% ownership stake, Sinclair Global Holdings. Position: Chairman of the Board of Directors. Board member since October 2019. Next scheduled meeting, Thursday, 3:30 p.m. Emergency session, Customer Service Protocol Review. Security clearance, Level 12, full executive access. The security guard's radio slipped from his numb fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. The sound cracked through the sudden, dead silence of the lobby like a gunshot. Sarah Jenkins gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Richard," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Do you see that? Do you understand what that means? It's fake. It's sophisticated fake software." Sterling sputtered, but his voice was thin and reedy. Beads of sweat were popping on his forehead. "Any hacker can mock up a screen like that." Julian turned the tablet so the crowd could see. The live stream camera captured every perfect pixel. The woman filming whispered, her voice filled with awe. Guys, this screen says he owns 73% of the whole bank. Is this happening?" The viewer count detonated past 3,000 as the clip went supernova. The comments were a blur of digital shock. "Holy saint, he owns the bank. Manager is so fired. Best plot twist ever. Richard Sterling is a dead man. Someone screen record this now." A woman who had been watching silently pulled out her own phone and started a second live stream. The college kids were uploading new clips to TikTok with captions like, "Owner not scammer" and "Plot twist of the century." Julian's voice sliced through the chaos, still unnervingly calm. "Mr. Sterling, would you like to know what was on that check you so theatrically destroyed for your audience?" Sterling's face was now a mask of dawning horror, but his pride forced him to double down one last pathetic time. "I don't care what lies you've programmed into your stolen tablet. That check was a forgery, and I destroyed it to protect my— It was my quarterly dividend payment, Julian stated, his words landing like hammer blows. From this bank, to me, as the majority shareholder. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop, except everyone was holding their breath. Julian swiped to another screen on his tablet, this one showing a detailed financial statement with the official Sterling Trust letterhead and security watermarks. Sinclair Global Holdings quarterly dividend, Q3 2025, $4,782,000 authorized by Board Resolution 729C, approved by Corporate Treasury, issued Thursday, September 18th. He looked down at the black dust on the floor, then back at Sterling, his expression one of mild academic curiosity. You just burned $4,782,000 of my personal income, Mr. Sterling, on camera, in front of a dozen witnesses and several thousand people online. Sterling's face had gone from pale to a ghastly shade of green. The wallet in his suit pocket, Julian's wallet, suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. That can't be, he finally stammered. Julian, with the practiced ease of a man who owned the entire system, opened another application on his tablet, the bank's internal employee directory. Marcus Sterling, Julian read aloud from the screen. Branch manager, Miami Downtown. Employee ID 70721. Annual salary $145,000. Hired June 2020. Performance rating satisfactory. Direct supervisor, Regional Director Jennifer Hayes. He looked up from the tablet, his eyes locking with Sterling's. You have been working for me for precisely 5 years and 3 months, Richard. The woman dripping in diamonds, who had cheered Sterling on, was now backing away toward the door as if the floor had become electrified. The businessman who suggested a run for city council looked like he was about to be sick. The teenagers who had been so excited to film a crime were now frozen, realizing they had just witnessed a corporate execution. One whispered to her friend, "Did we just watch a guy burn his own boss's money?" The live stream audience had exploded past 5,000. The comments were unreadable, a waterfall of shock and fire emojis. Sarah Jenkins found her voice first. Mr. Sinclair, I am so deeply sorry. We had no idea. This should never have happened. Of course you didn't know, Julian replied, his voice softening slightly as he looked at her. I dress this way when I visit my branches for a reason. I don't announce who I am. I come in like any other person because I believe every single customer, regardless of what they wear or how much money they have, deserves to be treated with respect. He stood up, tablet in hand, and surveyed the crowd. Many were now staring at their shoes, avoiding his gaze. But here's what truly disturbs me, Julian continued, his voice calm but resonating with power. This wasn't about a check. This wasn't about bank procedure. This was about an assumption. This was about a judgment you made the second I walked in. A judgment about who you thought deserved to be treated like a human being and who didn't. Sterling seemed to physically shrink, his expensive suit suddenly looking 2 sizes too big. Sir, if I had known who you were, he began desperately. That is precisely the problem, Julian interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. If you had known, what about just knowing I was a customer, a person? What about treating everyone with dignity? The ashes on the floor seemed to mock Sterling, a $4.7 million mistake that would follow him for the rest of his life. Julian checked his elegant watch one last time. 3:32 p.m. I am now 2 minutes late for my emergency board meeting. A meeting, ironically, that was called to discuss declining customer service standards at this very branch. He looked directly at Richard Sterling, his expression a mixture of profound disappointment and finality. I wonder what we'll be discussing now. 3:33 p.m. The reckoning had arrived. With the deliberate precision of a surgeon, Julian Sinclair opened a new application on his tablet. The corporate financial dashboard loaded instantly, displaying a cascade of real-time data that made the last traces of color drain from Richard Sterling's face. "Let's talk about some numbers, shall we, Richard?" Julian said. His voice remained eerily calm, which somehow made his words feel more like a death sentence than a lecture. Sterling Trust Bank generated $1.2 billion in gross revenue last fiscal year. My firm, Sinclair Global, was responsible for approximately $850 million of that through our majority ownership and ancillary business ventures. The live stream audience, now cresting 6,000 viewers, watched in hypnotized silence as Julian swiped through immaculate financial reports, each branded with the official corporate logo. The comments were now coherent, a chorus of awe. "He's got the receipts! He's destroying him with spreadsheets! This is the most savage corporate takedown in history. CEO using data as a weapon." Sarah stood frozen behind the counter, a silent witness to history. The ashes at her feet were no longer just burned paper. They were the physical evidence of a corporate apocalypse, a mistake that would redefine the entire institution. "This particular branch," Julian continued, consulting his tablet, "processes around $60 million in transactions every month. That's over $700 million a year flowing through these four walls. Your personal salary, Richard, is $145,000. Money that is derived directly from the profits generated by my capital." Sterling's mouth worked, but no sound emerged. He was a fish drowning in the open air. The wallet in his pocket, Julian's wallet that he had stolen, felt like it was burning a hole through his suit. Julian swiped again, this time to the bank's comprehensive corporate governance manual. "I want everyone here and everyone watching to understand the legal ground we are on. Section 3.7 of our Employee Code of Conduct explicitly states," he read aloud from the tablet, his voice clear and authoritative, "discrimination of any kind by bank personnel against customers is a violation of federal law and corporate policy. Any employee found guilty of discriminatory behavior based on race, appearance, or perceived socioeconomic status will face immediate disciplinary action, up to and including termination for cause and forfeiture of all benefits." The woman in diamonds, who had so eagerly endorsed Sterling's prejudice, was now slinking out the main entrance. Others began to follow her lead, a silent retreat of the complicit. "Furthermore," Julian went on, "Clause 8.1 of the corporate bylaws grants the chairman of the board, that's me, the unilateral authority to suspend any employee, at any level, immediately, pending a full investigation." His finger traced the text on the screen. "And Article 15 requires that all documented incidents of discrimination become a permanent part of an employee's record, discoverable in all future background checks, and reportable to federal banking authorities." Sterling finally found his voice, a pathetic, strangled whisper. "Mr. Sinclair, please, I have a family, I didn't know—" "But here is the most critical part, Richard," Julian interrupted, his tone gentle but devastating. "The willful and public destruction of a valid financial instrument, specifically burning a multi-million-dollar check, constitutes a federal offense under Title 18, Section 1344 of the U.S. Code, Bank Fraud. The penalties include substantial fines and a prison sentence of up to 30 years. The live stream viewer count exploded past 8,000. Idris Bankburn's check was now trending #1 in the United States, right alongside Conch Karma is Real and Concher Sinclair Slays Sterling. National news outlets were starting to pick up the story. Julian rose from the chair and began to walk slowly, deliberately, toward Sterling. Each step on the marble floor was a drumbeat, counting down to the final judgment. The space between them shrank with an awful, inexorable certainty. "So, allow me to present you with your options, Mr. Sterling. and I want you to listen very, very carefully. Julian's voice now carried the undeniable weight of absolute power. Option 1. You will immediately, right now, issue a full and unqualified public apology. To me, to every person in this room, and to the thousands of people watching this live stream. You will publicly admit your discriminatory actions. You will then accept a formal permanent reprimand in your employee file. You will submit to a mandatory 6-month sensitivity and anti-bias retraining program, and you will continue your employment here on a strictly probationary basis. Sterling nodded frantically, a flicker of hope in his terrified eyes. However, Julian continued, and the hope in Sterling's eyes died instantly. Option 1 also requires that you accept an immediate demotion from branch manager to a junior loan officer position with a corresponding 60% reduction in your salary. You will also personally reimburse the bank $50,000 for the legal and administrative costs of this incident, and you will perform 500 hours of unpaid community service at financial literacy centers in Miami's most underserved neighborhoods. A low murmur went through the remaining crowd as they absorbed the severity of the terms. Option 2. Julian's voice hardened, becoming cold steel. Is your immediate termination for cause. This will include the complete forfeiture of your pension and all accrued benefits, as stipulated under the discrimination and property destruction clauses of your contract. It will also include our formal referral of this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Given that your actions were filmed from multiple angles and broadcast live to a global audience, the evidence against you is, shall we say, irrefutable. Sterling's knees began to tremble. The stolen wallet was a searing brand against his chest. A termination for cause, Julian added relentlessly, consulting his tablet again, would trigger an immediate notification to the National Bankers Disciplinary Board, ensuring you will never work in the financial services industry in any capacity ever again. The viral nature of this video guarantees that your name and face will be forever associated with this act. He opened one final application on his tablet, the bank's HR portal. I can press this button right now, Richard. Your access to all bank systems will be revoked within 30 seconds. Security will escort you from the building. Your personal effects will be mailed to your home. The live stream audience was captivated. This is real accountability. Give him option 2. Make him pay. Justice in 4K. But there's a third consideration here that troubles me most, Julian said, looking down at the ashes. That $4.7 million you burned, that wasn't just my money. Those were funds earmarked for a new initiative to provide low-interest small business loans to minority entrepreneurs. It was seed money for educational scholarships. It was capital for community development. Your prejudice didn't just insult me, it actively harmed the very community this bank is supposed to serve. Sterling's face crumpled. The full catastrophic weight of his actions finally crashed down on him. Sir, please, he choked out. I have a mortgage. I have kids in college. I made a terrible mistake. I can't lose everything. One mistake? Julian's voice sharpened for the first time, a razor's edge. Richard, you didn't accidentally burn my check. You didn't mistakenly steal my wallet. You made a series of deliberate choices, all based on the color of my skin and the clothes I was wearing. You made a calculated assumption about my worth as a human being. He gestured toward the woman filming. And you performed your bigotry like a stage play. You wanted an audience. You wanted applause for your prejudice. Well, congratulations, Richard. You got exactly what you wanted. The security guards stood frozen, unsure of their role in this new world order. The ashes on the floor told the whole story. I need your decision. Now, Julian stated with utter finality. Public apology, demotion, community service, and probation. Or immediate termination, criminal charges, and the complete and utter destruction of your career. You have 60 seconds to decide what kind of man you are." He held up his tablet, his thumb hovering over the digital termination button. The clock on the wall read 3:37 p.m. "Choose wisely," Julian said softly, "because unlike the assumption you made about me, this decision will define you for the rest of your life." Sterling stared at the ashes, the black dust of his pride and prejudice. He finally understood. His moment of viral glory had cost him everything. The only way out was to swallow what was left of his arrogance and beg for a mercy he absolutely did not deserve. The 60-second countdown had begun. 3:38 p.m. The choice was made in the crucible of public humiliation. As the invisible 60-second clock ticked past 30, Richard Sterling's legs gave a slight buckle. The weight of the thousands watching, the ashes on the floor, and Julian's unwavering gaze was too much to bear. "Option 1, Sterling whispered, his voice a dry, rattling croak. I choose option 1. I apologize." Julian lowered his tablet, but his thumb remained poised over the screen. "Louder, Richard. Face the cameras. The world is watching. They need to hear you." Sterling turned, his face ashen, a hollowed-out mask of a man. He looked directly into the lens of the live streamer's phone. Over 8,000 people were now watching his abject surrender. Richard Sterling," he began, his voice cracking. "I want to sincerely and profoundly apologize to Mr. Julian Sinclair for my disgusting, discriminatory behavior." Tears began to well in his eyes. "I made racist, prejudiced assumptions based on his appearance. I destroyed his property. I treated him with a contempt that has no place in this bank or anywhere in a civilized society." The live stream comments were a torrent of reaction. Too little, too late. He's only sorry because he got caught. This is painful to watch. Good. Let him squirm. "Continue," Julian instructed, his voice devoid of emotion. Sterling's hands were shaking. "I apologize to every customer in this bank who had to witness my actions and to every single person watching this online. What I did was wrong. It was inexcusable, and it may have been illegal. I accept full responsibility, and I will accept the consequences." Sarah, the assistant manager, was already typing on her terminal, documenting the verbal agreement for the corporate record. Julian opened a new file on his tablet, an employee disciplinary action form. "Sarah, please draft Mr. Sterling's new employment contract. Reflect the demotion to junior loan officer and the 60% salary reduction. I need it sent to HR for processing within the hour." "Yes, Mr. Sinclair," Sarah replied, her tone crisp and efficient. She was no longer Richard's subordinate. She was Julian's agent of execution. Julian then swiped to the bank's corporate policy manual. Effective immediately, this branch, and soon all branches, will be implementing a new set of customer service protocols. Sarah, take this down for corporate-wide distribution. The livestream audience was now witnessing something far more profound than one man's downfall. They were watching the birth of a revolution. He's not just firing him, he's fixing the whole system. This is how you create change. "First," Julian announced, "we are instituting the Dignity First protocol. Every person who walks through our doors will receive the same level of immediate and courteous service, regardless of their appearance, their attire, or their account balance. Staff will greet every customer within 15 seconds. Sterling stood by, a ghost at his own funeral, as Julian dismantled his old world and built a new one on its ruins. The wallet, Julian's wallet, was still in his pocket, a final burning piece of evidence he needed to surrender. Second, the Respect in Real-Time initiative, Julian continued. All public-facing customer interactions will be audio and video recorded. These recordings will be audited monthly by an independent civil rights watchdog organization. Any pattern of biased behavior will trigger an immediate and full investigation. Should I schedule the tech installation, Mr. Sinclair? Sarah asked. Make it a top priority. I want the system operational in this branch within 72 hours. He swiped again. Third, mandatory quarterly unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity training for all employees, from the janitorial staff to the senior vice presidents. These will not be online modules. They will be in-person workshops led by experts and community leaders. The woman in diamonds, who had been lingering by the door, finally turned and left. The show was no longer entertaining. It was becoming a lecture, and she was implicated. Performance reviews, Julian continued, his voice ringing with authority, will now include specific weighted metrics on equitable customer treatment. Bonuses and promotions will be directly tied to these scores. He then walked slowly toward the ashes on the floor, his expensive shoes crunching on the remnants of the check. Fourth, we are establishing an anonymous customer feedback system, a direct, confidential hotline and email address that goes straight to a newly created Office of Customer Advocacy, which will report directly to me. He knelt down, carefully scooping some of the black dust into his hand. Sarah, I want these ashes collected and preserved. We're going to commission a display for this lobby. A display, sir? Sarah asked, confused. Julian stood, the ashes resting in his open palm like dark, corrupted snow. Yes, a framed display. We'll call it The Price of Prejudice. These ashes will serve as a permanent physical reminder that assumptions don't just destroy paper. They destroy trust, they destroy opportunity, and they destroy human dignity. The live stream comments turned overwhelmingly positive. Turning garbage into a lesson. This man is a genius. This is true leadership. Sterling finally found the courage to move. Mr. Sinclair, I still have your wallet. I am so sorry I took it. Julian extended his empty hand. Thank you for returning it, Richard. Sterling fumbled in his pocket, retrieved the wallet and placed it in Julian's hand. It was a transfer of power, the final act of his surrender. Now, about your community service, Julian said, looking at his tablet. You'll be working at the Liberty City Financial Empowerment Center. Every Saturday and Sunday morning for the next year, you will be teaching workshops on budgeting, credit repair, and small business planning. Yes, sir, Sterling mumbled. Specifically, Julian added with quiet intensity, you will be working with families who have been denied loans, families who have been victims of predatory lending, families who look just like me. You will learn their names, you will hear their stories, and you will, I hope, finally begin to develop the empathy you so clearly lack. The weight of the sentence settled on Sterling. A year of weekends spent confronting the very people he had held in contempt. A year of undoing the damage he and men like him had done. Your first session is this Saturday at 8 a.m., Julian stated. The center's director, a woman named Mrs. Dubois, is expecting you. She's a 68-year-old Haitian-American grandmother who has been fighting financial redlining for 50 years. I suggest you listen to every word she has to say. Mr. Sinclair, Sarah said, looking up from her screen. Should I inform headquarters about these new corporate-wide policy changes? I already did, Julian replied, showing her the screen of his tablet. The executive order was sent to the entire company 10 minutes ago. Every Sterling Trust branch in the country will adopt these standards within 90 days. The people in the lobby, and the thousands watching online, finally understood. They had witnessed more than a confrontation. They had witnessed systemic change, forged in the fire of one man's prejudice and another man's resolve. Julian looked around the quiet lobby. What happened here today wasn't just about me or Mr. Sterling. It was about what happens when we let assumptions guide our actions. We can choose to react with anger and revenge, or we can choose to use a moment of ugliness to build something better." He held up his hand, the ashes still resting in his palm. This was $4.7 million, but its real value is the lesson it taught us. Tomorrow, it will be the foundation of a better, fairer bank. The clock on the wall read 3:45 p.m. In just 30 minutes, Julian Sinclair had turned humiliation into education, prejudice into policy, and a personal insult into a national movement. Sterling stood silently, a broken man processing the enormity of his fall and the strange, unexpected mercy of his sentence. His career was in ashes, just like the check. But unlike the check, he was being given the chance to be remade into something better. "Any questions about your new duties, Richard?" Julian asked. Sterling slowly shook his head. "No, sir. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a second chance." Julian nodded once and turned to leave. "Don't thank me yet," he said over his shoulder. "Thank me in a year when you've learned to see a person instead of a stereotype." 6 months later. The display case in the lobby of the Sterling Trust Bank in Miami has become a strange sort of tourist attraction. Behind museum-quality glass, the charred ashes of a $4.7 million check are artfully arranged on a bed of black velvet. A simple brass plaque beneath reads, "The Price of Prejudice." May we never forget that our assumptions have a cost. Richard Sterling arrives at the Liberty City Financial Empowerment Center for his Saturday morning shift. It is his 52nd consecutive day. He no longer wears $1,000 suits. He wears a simple polo shirt and slacks. The man who once arrogantly burned a check now carries a box of donuts for the families he once would have dismissed. "Morning, Mrs. Dubois," he says warmly to the center's director. "Morning, Richard," the 68-year-old grandmother replies, her eyes twinkling. "The Garcia family is in room 2. Their application for a catering business loan was rejected. They need you to walk them through it, help them find the weak spots." Richard nods and heads down the hall, passing a bulletin board covered with photos and thank you notes from people he has helped. His transformation was not a single moment of revelation, but a slow, painful grinding away of a lifetime of prejudice, one human conversation at a time. The ripple effect of that day was a tsunami. The viral video, titled "The CEO's Reckoning," has been viewed over 25 million times. The bank burns check became a cultural touchstone, a shorthand for calling out casual bigotry in positions of power. Sociology professors use the incident as a case study in systemic racism and corporate accountability. The footage has been subtitled in 15 languages and is now a staple of corporate HR training modules around the globe. Companies in every sector began to adopt what the media dubbed the Sinclair Standards. David's Dignity First protocol became the new gold standard in customer service. The independent civil rights audits he mandated for his bank identified and corrected over 100 instances of potential bias across the network in the first quarter alone. We've seen a 40% increase in customer satisfaction among minority clients, reported Jennifer Hayes, the regional director, in a trade publication. But more than that, we've seen a seismic cultural shift. Our employees are now our watchdogs. They actively look for and correct bias. First National Bank's stock price soared. The story was good for PR, but the policies were even better for business. It turned out that treating everyone with dignity was incredibly profitable. Other banks, seeing the results, began to reluctantly follow suit. Richard's journey continued. He now sits across from Mr. and Mrs. Garcia, patiently explaining the complexities of debt-to-income ratios. "The bank sees this number as a risk," he explains gently, circling a figure on their application. "But it's a solvable problem. Let's build a plan together." Mrs. Garcia's eyes well up with tears of gratitude. You're the first person from a bank who has ever taken the time to actually help us, instead of just saying no. Richard feels the familiar pang of his past shame. Every family he helps is a reminder of all the people he hurt. His mandatory 500 hours of community service became 1,000. The court of Julian Sinclair's opinion had sentenced him to a year. His own conscience sentenced him to a lifetime of repentance. "I was wrong," Richard admitted to Julian during one of their mandatory monthly check-ins. "I thought my job was to be a gatekeeper, to keep people out. I realize now it's to be a guide, to help people in." Julian nodded. "That's a lesson that can't be taught, Richard. It has to be lived." The display case in the lobby now features a QR code that links to the original video and a resource page on unconscious bias. It explains how stereotypes become thoughts, thoughts become actions, and actions become systems. "Those ashes represent more than just money," Julian says in a recorded interview that plays on a loop next to the display. "They represent every resume that got thrown away, every loan that was denied, every person who was judged by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character. They are a monument to a moment of profound ugliness, but also to our capacity to learn from it." Julian Sinclair is not the hero of this story. The real heroes are the people who, like Richard, are willing to do the hard, painful work of unlearning a lifetime of prejudice. The real victory wasn't in one man's humiliation, but in the creation of a system that makes that kind of humiliation less likely to happen again. The first-class boarding pass to Geneva that Sterling never noticed? It led to a deal that funded a new tech incubator in Liberty City, creating hundreds of jobs. Julian's calm, calculated response created far more opportunity than a fiery, emotional outburst ever could have. And so the lesson of the burned check is this: your worth is not a piece of paper that can be burned. It is inherent. It is fireproof. What prejudices do you hold? What assumptions do you make about the people you meet every day? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because self-reflection is the first step toward change. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge our world. Hit the notification bell, because you never know when a simple moment can spark a revolution. And share this video if you believe that the best way to fight darkness isn't with more darkness, but with a light so bright it exposes every shadow. Use the hashtag #BontourFireproofWorth to share your own story of overcoming prejudice with intelligence and grace. Remember, they can burn the check, but they can never burn your value. And when you have the power, you don't just get revenge, you redefine justice. The ashes in that display case are not a symbol of destruction, they are fertilizer. From the ashes of prejudice, a better world can grow,